Today, we are tearing into a document that, well, the sources are calling it one of the oddest in United Nations history.
It really is. We're talking about UN Security Council Resolution 2803, which was just adopted on November 17th, 2025.
And it officially endorses this U.S.-drafted 20-point peace plan for Gaza. The goal seems straightforward enough: turn a very shaky ceasefire into something more like, lasting peace.
But the context here is, um, it's just critical. You have to remember this passed amid what our sources call global exhaustion and desperation. This is after
Okay.
2 years of bombardment, over 70,000 Palestinians dead, something like 70% of the territory's buildings just
Right.
harassed.
In that context, that sort of overwhelming pressure to just stop the fighting, that's really the only way to understand how this thing passed 13-0.
Exactly. It's a huge mandate.
But with two permanent members, China and Russia, abstaining. They didn't veto, but that hesitation, it says a lot.
It says a lot. So our mission today is to really get under the hood of Resolution 2803. We need to dissect the actual machinery here, the new governance, the security mandate, and why this blueprint is already facing these huge legal and global disagreements.
And this is where it gets so fascinating. How does a single plan championed by the U.S. and, backed by countries like Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, how does it get a cautious welcome from the Palestinian Authority?
Mhm.
And at the same time, an immediate, flat-out rejection from Hamas, all while UN legal experts are raising major red flags? It's a real political tightrope.
It is. So let's start with the governance blueprint. The foundation of this whole thing is a new transitional administration. They're calling it the Board of Peace.
The Board of Peace sounds pretty grand. What's its job exactly?
Well, the BOP's main role is to coordinate all the funding, oversee the massive reconstruction of Gaza, and basically just manage civil life until a reformed Palestinian government can take over.
So it's an international oversight body.
Right, designed to bring stability where there is none right now.
Okay, that sounds, fairly standard for a post-conflict situation. But the sources point to something about the leadership structure that is. Well, it's truly bizarre.
This is the part that makes it so odd. The sources specify that the Board of Peace will be chaired by none other than former U.S. President Donald Trump.
Wait, seriously?
Yes, he even declared, and I'm quoting here, that the board will be chaired by me and include the most powerful and respected leaders throughout the world.
Wow.
And former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair is also mentioned, maybe as a subordinate.
So a UN-endorsed body dealing with one of the most sensitive conflicts on the planet is being chaired by a former U.S. president known for his, let's say, disruptive approach to foreign policy.
It is. It completely sidesteps decades of normal UN peacekeeping norms.
Why would anyone agree to that?
I think the insight here is that it guarantees immediate, powerful U.S. control. It's designed for speed, to cut through bureaucracy,
Yeah.
but you do that at the cost of traditional international legitimacy.
And for the Arab states, I suppose the desperation for aid just outweighed the concerns over who was in charge. But there's another problem here, isn't there? The time frame. The authorization for this BBP, it expires at the end of 2027.
Yeah, that's a huge sticking point. December 31st, 2027. It's a very short leash.
For rebuilding 70% of a territory, that's nothing.
It suggests it's more of a short-term political vehicle than a long-term foundation. And in the meantime, the day-to-day grind is handled by a technocratic, apolitical committee of competent Palestinians.
So local Palestinians do the work, but they're supervised by this external Trump-led board.
Precisely.
Okay, that whole structure takes us right to the military side of this, which is maybe the most explosive part of the entire resolution, the International Stabilization Force.
Oh, absolutely, the ISF. The resolution authorizes this temporary International Stabilization Force, and its mandate is extremely broad. It says the force can use all necessary measures to carry out its mandate.
And that's the UN's strongest possible language, right? I mean, it means military force is authorized.
It is. It's a signal for robust action, well beyond traditional peacekeeping. They have three main jobs.
Which are?
First, secure the border areas, working with Egypt and Israel. Second, stabilize the security environment inside Gaza. And third, this is the most contentious one, ensure the process of demilitarizing the Gaza Strip.
Demilitarization. So we're talking about destroying tunnels, stopping new military buildup.
Exactly. Destroying all military infrastructure. And, this is the key phrase, the permanent decommissioning of weapons from non-state armed groups.
So that's the direct confrontation with Hamas.
It's the core requirement.
But if this international force is coming in, then surely the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, they withdraw completely. Is there a timeline for that?
And this is where the plan gives enormous leverage to Israel. The IDF withdrawal is explicitly conditional. It's based on standards, milestones, and timeframes linked to demilitarization that have to be agreed upon by the IDF, the ISF, the U.S., and other guarantors. The insight here is that it basically gives Israel a veto over the pace of its own withdrawal.
So until Israel says those demilitarization goals are met, the IDF can stay.
Not only that, the resolution specifically allows the IDF to retain a security perimeter presence until Gaza is considered secure from any resurgent terror threat.
A security footprint remains. The practical challenge here just seems staggering. We don't even know who will contribute troops to this ISF, and Hamas has already rejected the whole thing. So how is this force supposed to disarm, quote, battle-hardened fighters?
That's the single biggest question. The U.S. is hoping for troops from Egypt, Turkey, the UAE, but those countries are being very cautious.
Because forcing disarmament sounds less like peacekeeping and more like combat.
It would almost certainly require large-scale military operations. It risks turning the ISF into an occupying force itself, not a stabilizing one.
Okay, let's shift to the political side. The path to statehood. I understand this was the price the U.S. had to pay to get the Arab and Islamic states on board.
It was the compromise, yes. They insisted on some kind of political horizon, otherwise they wouldn't back a plan that was just about security. So the U.S. added the language, but it's exceptionally conditional.
Break down that conditional language for us. What does it actually promise?
It says a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood might be in place, but only if two very high hurdles are cleared. First, the Palestinian Authority has to reform itself faithfully. And second, the redevelopment of Gaza has to be far enough along. Only after both of those things happen will the U.S. set up a formal dialogue.
So Palestine's political future is basically contingent on outsiders deciding if the PA has reformed enough and if enough buildings are back up.
That's how it's being read, yes.
Yeah.
It looks less like a pathway and more like an indefinite delay.
And that obviously created political friction.
Immediately. It enraged Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing coalition. He was forced to come out and reiterate his visceral objections to a Palestinian state.
Even while his government was welcoming the security parts of the plan.
Exactly. So the chief guarantor is welcoming the security tools while simultaneously rejecting the resolution's own stated political endpoint. It just highlights the deep, deep contradictions here.
Which brings us to the reactions. We know Hamas flat out rejected it.
Absolutely. They called it an international guardianship mechanism.
Yeah.
They argued that asking an international force to disarm the resistance, it strips it of its neutrality and turns it into a party to the conflict.
But the Palestinian Authority and the West Bank, they saw it differently.
Very different take. The Palestinian foreign minister called it a necessary first step. For the PA, just getting the international community to say the words Palestinian statehood, even with all the caveats, that was a win. That and securing the ceasefire.
Okay, so now we get to maybe the most damning critique of all. The one from the international legal community. UN experts identified 15 specific concerns. Let's focus on their top 3.
Right, and these critiques really go to the heart of the resolution's legitimacy. The first one is the conditionality of self-determination. The experts argue that making statehood a reward for good behavior goes against international law. Self-determination is supposed to be an inalienable right, not something you earn.
So they're saying this allows outside powers to just arbitrarily manage Palestine's political future. What about their second point on the BOP and the ISF?
That's the critique of foreign control versus occupation. They warn that the BOP, chaired by the U.S. president, and this very aggressive ISF, they could resemble colonial governance practices or even a U.S.-led occupation.
Because it bypasses normal UN accountability.
Exactly. It's authorized by the Security Council, but it's not run by the UN. They see it as a U.S. protectorate masquerading under a UN resolution, infringing on Palestinian sovereignty.
And their final point flagged the security rules as being completely imbalanced.
That's the third one. Unequal obligations. The plan demands indefinite demilitarization of Gaza, leaving it vulnerable, but it places no parallel security obligations on Israel. and allowing the IDF to keep a security perimeter inside Gaza. Well, the legal experts see that as just a continuation of the occupation by another name.
That's a powerful set of arguments against a resolution born from, sheer desperation. So we've unpacked this new architecture, the Board of Peace, the ISF, the conditional political track, and the fault lines it's exposed are just massive.
And the sources reveal this paradox, right? You have a plan with the force of international law behind it, but it's built on these aspirational, almost flimsy structures. A celebrity-led board, a temporary mandate. It's facing resistance from Hamas, from the Israeli right wing, and it's under intense legal scrutiny.
So the resolution's backers say this is the start of enduring peace. But think about this for a moment. The plan focuses entirely on security and governance. But the UN legal experts, they stress that it completely ignores the core historical issues. It says nothing about dismantling illegal settlements, nothing about the right of return for refugees, nothing about reparations for all the destruction. So, can a peace plan ever truly work if it postpones or just ignores the actual historical roots of the conflict? Especially when all the key players, the US, Israel, the Arab states, seem to be hoping to ride the tiger of the US president's involvement toward their own very different political goals. That's the ultimate question this resolution leaves you with.